Go ahead and record.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Oliver Crocco. Most people know me as Ozzy, and I am the chair of the Leadership SIG. And it is my incredible honor today to begin this webinar here. This is actually our third webinar that the Leadership SIG has put on. And I think this is a great way that we've been able to have some interesting speakers talk about their compelling work that is related to leadership and the Academy of AHRD. So I'd like to just take a couple minutes of introduction to tell you about AHRD, for those of you who don't know, the Leadership SIG, and then also our speaker today. So for those of you who don't know, the Academy of Human Resource Development, the vision of it is to lead human resource development through research, but we are very much interested in that practitioner researcher bridge, and so that's also part of the reason that we have these webinars. AHRD is a global organization. So for those of you who don't know, we have conferences in the US. Our next conference is in February in Atlanta. We have conferences in Asia and also in Europe. And actually this year, 2019, is the first year I'm planning to make it to all three. So for those of you coming to Vietnam in November, hope to see you there. And in addition to the 4 journals that AHRD does, there's a lot of other benefits in addition to like the SIG membership. And so we hope that if you're new to the Academy that you'll check us out, and maybe we'll see you at the conference in February. Now the Leadership SIG was formed to encourage systematic study of HRD theories, policies, and practices, and to disseminate information about HRD, specifically related to leadership. And actually leadership in some studies was the top construct, or the top term that was found in the study of all the different keywords of HRD literature. So, and it tends to be the largest SIG. So we're really proud about that and really excited about that. My notes quit on me here. Hold on one second. So our speaker today some of you may know, is Dr. Yoshie Nakamura of the George Washington University. And the topic is mind, brain, and behavior, implications for HRD. For those of you who weren't able to read her bio, Dr. Nakamura is an assistant professor of human and organizational learning at GW at the Graduate School of Education and Human Development. And her research includes adult learners' mind, brain, and behavior, focusing on reflective practices, leadership value development, women's leadership development, and today's topic. She received her doctorate in adult learning and leadership from Columbia University and holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in literature, as well as a Master of Arts in international education and a Master of Education in adult learning and leadership. So it's just this type of interdisciplinarity, this type of broad base and pulling from many different areas that I think makes our field so rich. So we're excited to have you. Dr. Nakamura, thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Ozzy. Such a pleasure being here with us today, and really appreciate that AHRD Leadership SIG hosting that webinar series. And I'm so happy to be with you today. It's on learning communities. And as the Ozzy nicely introduced about the topic of today's talk, it's about my interdisciplinary research journey and incorporating neuroscience. So as Ozzy nicely mentioned about my background and the profile, it's about my, let me see, I don't think I have a hosting function to move forward my slide. So if you could, Bill or Ozzy, you can get me the host.
Okay, Yoshie, you are the host now.
Is it? Okay.
Okay, so just push your down arrow and that should take you to the next slide.
Hold on a second. Okay, let me see. It worked before.
pani profesor, na której pracuję.
I like that. Okay.
There you go.
So thank you. So it's a learning journey of how to use my mouse and also my learning journey as a scholar. So my passion and mission is about helping people better learn and grow in organizational settings. And I have done social networking studies and leadership development, focusing on values and authenticity, awareness leadership. So all about like learning and development so that they can better perform. And I use that road of a reflection in all of my studies so far. And because of the human subject research, as we all know, there is always limitation. Always limitation. So always I'm hearing somebody's voice. If you can mute, that would be great.
Ona ma prezentację. Tam się ludzie zapisali z całego świata.
Please, I would just ask everyone, please mute your microphone during the presentation, and then during Q&A, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask some questions. Thank you so much.
Okay.
You can also mute everyone from your end if you're a host.
Yes, I tried to find it, and I think I did it. Thank you so much. Thank you for your help. So again, I always have a question: how I can better address my. Let me see. What are the other ways to better address my research questions? So then that led me to the more neuroscience field, because I had opportunities to work with neuroscientists at my prior institution. And I started to be very curious about what other neuroscience research findings that approach can help me better answer my research question. And the neuroscience that I discovered so far, which you might already know, is the multidisciplinary in nature. I have seen a neuroscience incorporate research studies or theory development in multiple, different disciplines. It starts from computer science, linguistics, sociology, economics, psychology, anthropology, philosophy, management, education. But wow, it's really coming up in multidisciplinary field. And I'm sure you have seen it in the journal articles, the multidisciplinary teams put together the research team and build the theory, testing it, and produce such a wonderful work. So then what happened to the HRD? HRD is really multidisciplinary in nature too. And I have seen sociology, economics, psychology, anthropology, philosophy, management, education is really like grounded in these interdisciplinary fields and looking at the HRD, right? And computer science linguistics, so far, it's not so much there, but I started to see the possibilities or started to see the emergence of that approach that it's maybe married with the HRD way of the research and study and practice, right? For example, computer science is more of the linguistics, more text mining approach. Maybe we can incorporate in the future. That help us better address my research questions maybe. So that's a different story. So my focus is neuroscience today. And again, this is really multidisciplinary field, and neuroscience can better inform. So that's my focus, and I have been working on that. And as you might already know, I heard some of you may not be in academy or maybe more practice in professional settings. So this is the theory work of the how that HRD components and applications look like. And these are really about training development, organization development, and application piece at the bottom. And you might associate yourself to your work or focus, and some of them or many of them, right? For example, me, like social capital theories, I have worked on that, and organizational effectiveness and leadership and etc. Right? So these are things that I usually focus on, and for this field as well. So then, if you think about HRD, the nature of the discipline, it's about study of people and learning in organizations, right? And then I focus on these three elements of the experience, association, learning, and the memory and the emotions. And here, as you already know, the experience, association, learning is well discovered and focused in the neuroscience-based study as well. Because of the adults has a lot of established neural networks. And when, for example, when events coming up to you, or you experience something, my brain immediately categorize that event and comparing to the unknown to become known. So that's more categorizations, association of the events with the prior experiences. So that's how that's happening in a mechanism in our brain. And that we do study in the AHRD field using the adult learning theory, for example. And the memory function is also very important when we think about AHRD study incorporating neuroscience. And this kind of figure you might have seen before in short-term memory versus long-term memory. If you have seen a Disney movie like Inside Out, that really clearly explains what the short-term memory is, long-term memory is, and I encourage you to watch that if you haven't seen it before. So but my focus is more of the down the middle of the episodic memory. That's where a long-term memory has the two segments, explicit memory or declarative memory, or implicit memory, and here procedure memory or non-declarative memory, right? Implicit memory is more of the motor skills, for example. Explicit memory, and especially for episodic memory, it's about our memory of the experiences, meaning that events that happen to you in your life, first day of your job, your graduation ceremony, the memory that you can think about, that you live in the memory. You are there. The Bell says semantic memory that's more of the facts and knowledge. That, for example, this figure that gives you the information and language and the terms, jargons, that's also the facts and knowledge. But you are not live in that memory, right? So my focus is episodic memory of the events experiences, and as you have done, I assume, HRD-based research or practice, it's how you know that how important the focus of this area is. Right? Episodic memory, it's really represents that in what Eric Kandel, the Nobel Prize winner, the neuroscientist, my favorite neuroscientist, mentions, we are what we remember. We constantly retrieve the past memory and to make a decision or to associate with what's happening, a new memory, new experiences, and make a decision. Oh, this is what happened before. Similar things happened before, so it's going to be good things or bad things, right? And we do that utilizing the AHRD practice. For example, numerous approaches to use that and to retrieve the memory and to make sense of it. That's the storytelling approach, for example. Reflective practices. Wait a minute, what happened? That similar thing happened before. And how you make meaning of it. Is this good or bad? How do you feel about right now? Or would you make a different decision as you reflect back, right? Or you are question yourself, the inquiry approach, right? What does it mean really to you? Or somebody asking you a question. There are numerous, again, of the approaches out there that we use and we incorporate sometimes in our studies as well. So then other elements that I really focusing on emotions, because of the emotions right there. Emotions, but in our brain, it's more of wired into really tendency to treat that events happening to us all the time. It's more like a threat. Like new things could be a threat. Unknown things could be a threat, so that we can better survive. That's the primitive in nature, that we don't have really like life or death situations, everyday life. We don't encounter lion on the street much. If we go to certain places, maybe yes. But again, these things are really wired deeply deeply established in our brain. So it's so easy for us to feel the threat response right away. For example, your boss is looking at you with suspicious eyes, right? And then it you really treat that moment as a threat, and you have threat response so easy. So that said, we also get a lot of the social cues. That's why I have this social group, environment, context, nature of the image here on the slide as well. We get the cues all the time, and then we interpret right away. And it's so important for us to really think about what's the threat response we have, like social. Do we have the self-awareness? How I react to the certain situations. So these are things that it's widely studied already in the AHRD field as well. You might recall that specific concept of the emotional intelligence, for example. So then now shifting gear to the, so what is the differences, overlaps between neuroscience-based approach or research and AHRD, traditional or commonly used approach? So in this slide, now you can see that how the neuroscience area that studies, it really starts with the millisecond level of the change. It's more like a neural level, like a gene level, right? So you start with really milliseconds to could be like a minute level, maybe an hour. But then, as you can see, the whole brain functional networks approach is also emerging, and people widely started use in brain behavior interactions as well. That's more of the second level, second level to maybe hour, day, but it's not like a month or it's not years. So you see the little bit overlaps with the neuroscience-based approach, neuroscience approach, and also AHRD, widely used approach, right? So AHRD is more the individual group learning or performance approach. So then we study the individual groups, and then we maybe study hours of, let's say, intervention of the workshop or training. We study or field observation, interviews, and pre and post. And that can be extended to like a day, and it could be months if we do like a longer term of the intervention approach or do the follow-up studies. And organization level, like OD, organizational learning, that's also maybe days to could be like a year if we want to see organizational change. And societal level, that's more social action, etc. Takes a long time as we see if we want to see the changes or unchanges or evolution, etc. So you see the little bit of the overlaps of the individual group learning performance into the brain behavior interactions and whole brain functional networks. So I go into this a little bit of overlaps. However, it's very difficult to use that hours level or day level using these whole brain functional networks approach, which is represented by multiple different kinds of equipments. EEG is electroencephalography. That's the record electrical activity of the brain using like a headset or a cap. MEG as well, the magnetic, and fMRI, as you have seen before, I'm sure, or in some other cases that you have seen in articles. And fNIRS, that's similar to MRI. So that's something, imagine that you cannot ask participants to be in MRI days, weeks, right? So that's the challenge when we think about incorporating a neuroscience approach using that kind of equipment, and how you create that very targeted, time-locked moment to study, and that inform the individual level of the learning performance. It could be organization level of the learning and performance, right? So then I already mentioned to some extent in terms of different types of the equipment. They are just examples that if you want to see the stress level, there is also acute level stress, you can do the swab, or like a hair also can be more prolonged stress level that you can also get some information in a neurological, biological approach. And on the top picture is the fMRI. And then right top picture is more the heart pulse sensor. So that's still development stage. I'm working with the mechanical engineering professor to develop if we incorporate EEG and also ECG, electrocardiogram, to see if there's any correlation or get better obtaining more of the data to be able to look at what's happening in the brain level and the body level of the heart pulse. And eye tracking also other ways to really see, get the data in terms of the looking at the eye movement. And then right bottom picture is the EEG. So different types of the headsets or caps are available. And that gives a lot of different ways to approach, or you see the pros and the cons, and if you're getting into that type of the equipment, but that's the EEG. So you wear the headset while you're working on asking participants to work on the tasks. So my study, ongoing study, I incorporate EEG. So EEG is known as to use the ERP, which is event-related potential. And ERP is a measured brain response that is a direct result of a specific sensory, cognitive, or motor event. Right? EEG is providing non-invasive approach and to study psychophysiological correlates of mental processes. So that said, any like a mouse study, EEG, sometimes very invasive. You put the needle direct to the scalp that you don't want to like picture it. How could be, not pleasant picture, right? But this EEG they use for the human is more of the just wearing it and minimum of risk. You might have in case like maybe irritation or little bit because of if we use a gel or saline solution. So, but that's it, right? So you might have have to move a little bit of hair to put the electrode nose into the scalp, the surface of the skin of the head, but that's it, right? You're just wearing it and while working on whatever you're asked to do, and that continuous recording happening. And that's really gives us the more of the data sets of what's actually happening while the person is working on or thinking on and learning about XYZ. Okay. So then thinking about HRD intervention research. So HRD in the fields, there are so many different types of the research methods used. And that's really rich. And when I look at my past studies, I try to look at the intervention, right? So then it could be experimental research, quasi-experimental. I did a case study, right? So looking at the specific intervention, that something that pre and a post that could be shows a different outcomes, right? So hopefully with the hope that it's the effectiveness, right, given the intervention. But my studies in the past, for example, takes, like, let's say 3 days of the workshop. I did a pre and a post, and I also did the field observation, right? Or I do like only the post. Could be like a week-long training workshop. Or just looking at the specific moment the person can identify using critical incident approach and what makes them choose that path, right? That's also other ways, but it's not the intervention. But then interventions are always in my mind, and what other ways that we can help the individuals to better learn and grow. So then if we think about EEG and ERP, EEG and ERP, it's about designing a specific stimuli, which is time locked. So what I think about feasibility, that what's the realistic for me to design this kind of the study, that essence of the learning or what's happening that moment, to pull that really small segment into the particular experiment, the time locked. Let's say 30 minutes, 1 hour, the person may be able to wear, right? Participants, maybe I might be able to recruit. And what kind of stimuli can we present to answer my research question? So that has been a real challenge and a struggle for me, that what is it that if I look at that learning segment, reflections, for example, how I can create the moment, let's say 30 minutes long moment, that for me to be able to see that what's happening in the brain. It's not like just, okay, just reflect, thinking about this topic, then it's all over. But then I need to have a specific stimuli to create. So that's where my learning journey started, to know how I can create a better research, design that's including stimuli in a time locked, thinking about how realistic it is. So then let me share a little bit more about EEG, the future. So EEG is well known to really monitor brain waves. You have heard of delta waves, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, somewhere at some time. And brain waves are produced by synchronized electrical pulses, and from us, neurons are communicating with each other, right? So each brain wave has a distinct purpose and helps us behave, think, move, and process. So EEG, as you can imagine, it's really a kind of headset. Let's say, think about headset. So then, and it's a good metaphor I put out a stadium picture here, because EEG cannot really detect what actual really pinpoint parts of the brain is really activating it, because it's not fMRI. So spatial level of the analysis in EEG is not be able to detect much. However, in a stadium, for example, picture, it's impossible for you to distinct every single individual's conversation, because so many crowds here, you are in there, right? But if most of them kind of shouting, yelling all of a sudden, you get the sense of what events are happening, really. So that's how a good metaphor to really understand what the EEG can provide. And also that through the brain waves. So let me just see if I can mention quickly about the each brain waves, what each brain waves means. As you have heard, delta is more like used for the sleep study, which is true. But the recent studies and using the, based on the past studies, and actually start looking at the delta could be more involved in the stimuli, like auditory, like both tasks, something that are unexpected, something that they have to really react to that moment. And theta waves associated with a more relaxed and open mind state that relates to the creativity, like a wholeness and intuition. And alpha is the kind of bridging between a beta and a theta. But alpha also gives the attention, focus, and alert. So when I do the study, I ask subjects to get the baseline activity of the brain. The first, open your eyes, steady, close your eyes, steady. So before after the closed eyes and then open eyes, the more alpha wave more activates. Because of the open eyes get more attention versus closed eyes. So beta waves are channeled during a conscious states such as cognitive reasoning, calculation, reading, speaking, thinking. So it's more of the working hard in the brain as a thinking or learning really how to make meaning of it before you really articulate what you want to say, or something like that. And the gamma waves is an interesting wave that it's involved in processing more complex tasks, and it's really more of the recent discovery that gamma waves is also associated with learning and memory and processing. So that said, this is a very quick, basic overview of my learning journey to what my focus has been, what kind of equipment I'm trying to use, and what areas I have been focusing on, which is learning, association, experience, memory, and emotion. So let me share now of my research study. It is ongoing, so I do not have the concrete findings. It's the very beginning of my study, and with the hope that gives you some idea of how I come up with the research design and what my struggles are and have been. And that gives you some hopefully opportunities to think about what's really the implication for the AHRD and what it means to your research and practice if you have been incorporating neuroscience or you are planning or curious about incorporating neuroscience. So my ongoing research study is the role of reflection in leadership development. So before I get in there, let me ask you think about this question. What is the most stressful moment you had within the last 6 months? When I ask these kind of questions in a class, and sometimes people say, oh no, I don't want to think about it. It's hard to think about the stress moment sometimes if that's really seriously impact you or your daily life at that time. So I plan to use the chat box, but because of the time, I'm just gonna go on, but I hope that I gave you some moments for you to think about it. So it's about change. That's the number one always comes up, and making decision under high pressure too, right? And because you feel be more responsible to succeed. And also the judging moments too, put you in a spot. Oh no, so people are judging me, evaluations, etc. And of course, there are more and more, right? So at the workplace, there are many times that we encounter to struggle and challenging situation to deal with. And sometimes we are able to work on successfully, other times maybe not so much, and we learn from it, right? But still very stressful when that happens. And it happens sometimes very often, right? So as I think about this situation, and my focus is how I can learn better that what's happening when they face in difficult moments and how they engage in the reflection, right? So this is this picture may remind you of the particular equation theory, which is the Kurt-Lewin's theory. And I also use that below citation. It shows that personalized environment learning, environment also the emotion. In this particular article is talking about emotion regulation strategies, but I modified into the person and environment and the learning. So then, of course, there's a person. The person brings to so many things onto the table: experiences, leadership capabilities, preferences, right, learning styles, etc. And then there are so many situations that person or all of us encounter at work, right? And it could be very, very severe, difficult, challenging situations to relatively easy one that you can solve because you experienced before, or you can manage pretty well, even though it's a little difficult, right? And then what happens if we have magic wand and to get the how-to book approaches that can solve, help you better deal with, and so that you can have a better outcome, better decision making, and that leads to better outcome. So this how-to, that is one of the how-to, could be that reflective practices. So my focus is again for the role of the reflection, and that this is overarching question in my ongoing study. What is the role of reflection in face of adversity? Difficult moments people face. So then I bring in a theory into my research design. Then reflection in general plays an important role in human activity as people think about their experiences, reframe problems, acquire new understanding, and develop knowledge through the process, right? And that reflection can happen in so many different forms. And two ways that I distinguish in this particular study is individual reflection or with somebody else. And I label it guided reflection. I can explain more later. Right, so as you can imagine, or you can really immediately associate with what I say individual reflection. You just reflect all the time. Not all the time, but when things happen, you reflect individually quietly on the street while you're walking or looking at the computer, you just individually reflect. Guided reflection is more of the having a conversation with somebody or be with somebody, right? And that could be the multiple people collective reflection. That you engage in the conversations, discussions at the meetings, and wait a minute, how we think about this challenge, or what happened to this and such, what's the implications, what are we going to do with it, right? And then also the reflection happens in the moment, reflection in action, which is Chris Ajis and Sean's work. That reflection in action is in the midst of something happening that you reflect. What are you working on, doing it? And reflection on action is the after effect. That something happened 5 minutes ago or a week ago. Then now I reflect back, this is something happens. It really, I feel really this way, or I see now that if I make meaning of what happens, a series of consequences, right? What's the impact on me? How I deal with it, how I think now about how I dealt with. So I come up with this program and practice is about that reflection is more of the underestimate the power of reflection sometimes because of the time constraint. Because realistically, you cannot take time of reflection while you are juggling with multiple time constraint deadlines and activities, right? Let's reflect. You don't do that much, right? And it's tend to really forget and doing it. So that's also other articles and researches and happening. And if you think about that, how you incorporate reflective practices and embed it in your work. Daily work activities. But it's still, it's really a challenge for working professionals. And then, okay, so now the problem of research is limited research exists that sheds light on the ways in which individual guided reflection happens at the neural level when facing adversity. So again, as I said earlier, my curiosity and intention is to better understand what's going on while people engage in the reflection moment. So in addition to, I can add, which I do in my current study, is pre and post the data. So could be like using a pre-survey and post-survey. What happened, what do you think about this and such, and versus and what happened and how you reflect on what happened, right? But then during the reflection, it's hard to get out from people's mind what's happening right at the moment. So that's where that I incorporate neuroscience research with the hope that I can better answer my research question. So then the purpose of the study is to examine how individual guided reflection impacts brain activities from biological and neurological perspective. And hypothesis, big overarching hypothesis I have is the guided reflection causes higher brain activity than individual reflection in face of adversity, such as challenging situation. When you design a study incorporating neuroscience, you think about reflection action level, in this case reflection, because my focus is reflection, but action level, right? Or it's behavior level. And then you also think about the brain level, because the two different types of the data you might be able to collect. And I put guided reflection here, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, is with somebody else. So with somebody else, meaning that I have the two, it's not about having a two subjects. I have one subject participant, and then a facilitator gives the prompts, the questions, so that it creates the kind of the simulative, close to the similar moment, where the person is something with somebody else, and somebody else can be questioning, right? And that's really questioning, the approach that I used in my study, and that the same questions with the manual that are used across different individuals. And then I have more of the detailed hypothesis. This is just examples, and brain using more of the a specific brain wave, and how that brain wave heightens the activities or not. And you can see that in the examples. And the other challenges that I can mention here is that neuroscience area, it's a lot of the things discovered already, but still there's so many things that still in the phase of the discovery. So a lot of the things out there with the specific research design that people talking about. So you really have to have the open mind, a constant research on getting into the multiple different arena of the research journals to get what's really finding here about the theta and about the beta or combination, and of a specific intervention, what really means to my own research design, how I can incorporate that and sort of create hypothesis. So the series of hypotheses that I have that I need to test. So then the method is I create the scenarios, which is stimuli. And that starts with a completely distinct from the rest of the study. This, because of the different population, is the purpose of creating a stimuli. And then scenario intervention to follow up is the same subject. And I dividing into two groups, an individual reflection group and a guided reflection group. And that's where they work on the scenarios, and then they wear the headset. And then follow up is the sort of creating reflection on action opportunity, and for people to reflect on their decision making of the scenarios. This is what happened. This is how you make a decision. And now you reflect back over your decision or action, how you reflect, how you feel about it. Do you want to change your answer, and then why? So scenario development, I created the scenarios and then do the survey. It's basically about how difficult it is to make a decision, right? And then it's interesting, the patterns that I have seen based on that results is the personal, non-personal, or social, non-social. So it is someone who already, it's the scenario itself is includes the possible impact on other people, even the scenario level. If you think about that situation when your decision really significantly impact the people in your group, let's say that scenario is about, and then it's they take it more difficult to make a decision unless they have a very solid the values and beliefs that, oh, this is really bad thing, right? And also I look at the prior experiences and the personal, non-personal experiences. That's more of the how personal, non-personal, meaning is the decision is, the scenario itself is actually impacting that people, you know, versus impacting long-term could be, and that people you are not directly deal with. So then phase 2, I know that we have only 11 minutes left, and I really want to make sure I have a Q&A time. So let me just speed up a little bit. So, and a phase 2, which is more stimuli experiment. So using the individual reflection group and guided reflection group, as I mentioned earlier, individual reflection group, just the work on individually, quietly, individually, and then no other prompts. And guided reflection group is again someone that to ask question in a very manuscripted way, but still getting a question prompt about have you ever had an experience before? What does it mean to you? An emotional piece too, which is it could be trigger the memory, then how you feel about it. That may evoke so many different things because emotions are always right there when you retrieve the memory. If that something happens or how you feel about it, because it's something that associated with that happened before. And this is just an example to show that how that it looks like. And this is just one subject. And so I'm not going to conclude what it means here, but this is the way that we look at the holistic level of all the brain waves incorporated. That's the top level of the analysis, and also break it down on theta, alpha, beta, gamma. You'll have a delta here, but I need to have that. So then I also break it down as 3 different segments of reading, thinking, and making decision. So because of the stimuli that I created, is the have people to read the scenarios. So that's a reading piece and the thinking piece. And then thinking, I ask them to thinking aloud. So reading aloud and then thinking aloud. So just so that let's see, this is happening, blah, blah, blah. But when that guided reflection is thinking phase, that they also receive questions. How do you feel about the situation? What it means to you, right? And then making decision is, okay, so now I'm going to make a decision. This is, I'm going to choose this path or that path. So I have some implications for the future research practice and using this particular study, but still it's the very beginning of the study. They could be like a change in so many different ways, but overall, I would like to have more insights of what's happening and how that reflective practices that helps the people deal with the difficult situations. And also hopefully creating a stimuli, the database that can be used widely for those who want to do the similar studies or take the studies to the beyond level. And this one is, I just have to more of the recap of my learning journey and how that things are very difficult for me to deal with, which is really discovery process for me, and it's still I'm learning. And because also of the field of neuroscience, it's really like rapidly evolving. And you have to really pay attention to the multiple different sources and interdisciplinary journals, from, of course, from management and leadership, education to psychiatry, a journal to neuroscience journal to psychology journal to etc. Could be like a children's study too. And then incorporate new methods and approaches to study design. That's also the challenge, as I described before, from the HRD, more commonly used study design to really creating a specific momentum stimuli, and what's the connection or relationship between what's the brain level and also action level or behavior we can observe or we can ask from the, through the interviews and the surveys and or observation, get the feel of it, right? What does it mean really? And why we need that to include that neural level of the analysis and the data collection. And a possibility of interdisciplinary team too, right? You might want to, I have seen that neuroscience-based research that team up with the multiple discipline team, and from the data science to a psychologist to sociologist to anthropology to, so it's a possibility, but you still need to learn how to communicate, because the similar concept, they might use a slightly different angle or slightly different ways of describing it, which HRD is already experienced that in nature. So it could be relatively easy to go out and team up with or have a conversation with the people in a complete different discipline. And finally, carefully designing simulation environments is needed for secure insight. So that's also my challenges, and also I see the opportunities. Okay, well, that said, I just wanted to thank you very much for listening, and I really appreciate your time and be together today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nakamura. That is fantastic. So much interesting things there. We don't have much time left, but I want to open it up to anyone in the audience to ask any questions you might have. And I also have some questions if no one does. So any questions? You may need to unmute everyone. Dr. Nakamura, you may need to, I don't know if people can unmute
I need to,
but
okay, hold on a second.
I don't know if that's something that you need to do as the host or.
Yeah, let me see. Oh, I think I need like what I did.
Nice. Any questions? Well, I can get started on a short one. And my question is about the bridge with leadership. And we know obviously that, reflection is a huge part of leadership development. But can you talk more about the connection between this research and leadership and or leader development?
Sure. So I, because of the reflective practices and also the leadership experiences, I have seen that from my prior leadership studies that the leaders really encounter more of the responsibilities and having more responsibilities, and that face the challenging situations. And their decision making is the way a lot that implications for the outcomes and impact on others, and of course the business success as well. So then how they can create more of the reflective practices, the sort of practice muscles to be able to better manage their emotions and retrieve the memories and make a decision so that they can sort of internally make sense of how they make a decision rather than reacting or regret it later. So that's how I come up with, and I ask the management experiences too.
Great, thank you. I want to also give time. I see that we have a question from John DeForest here. I'm really interested in the interface between experience and the brain. Could you say more?
experience in the brain. Sure. So in my study, I also record while the people engage in that entire task. So let's say about 30 minutes of the task they engage in and working on stimuli. I ask them to speak aloud, think aloud, and record everything. So that also gives the what's triggered them to think about this way, that way. So I had this, and I have seen that people saying I had this before, or no. And I ask also the follow-up survey asking that experiences. Have we ever had the similar experiences before? And so that I can hopefully see the tendency, the patterns to correlate, and that how that makes feel or make a decision, how they perceive the difficulty of solving that particular situation. And also guided reflection also poke that experiences more of prior experiences and versus individually. That's my assumption and my question too.
Thank you, Dr. Nakamura.
Thank you.
Any last quick questions? We're down to the final minute here. I want to respect everyone's time. If not, we will say thank you so much for that great presentation. We will post the recording. Well, we will send it out to the people who registered in the group. So if you were not able to attend today, you will get this in an email. So thank you once again. We're giving you a virtual hand clap and applause. Dr. Nakamura, thank you very, very much. And we hope that this research inspires all of us to be thinking about more cutting edge ways to understand leadership and learning and that intersection. So thank you very much. With that, we'll sign off. Thanks also to Bill Brantley, who also has been a key member of the Leadership SIG and has helped a lot with the tech side of things. So thank you very much, Bill. All righty, with that, have a wonderful rest of your